Okay. Hi, I'm Dina Moskowitz, and I'm CEO of Partner Optimizer, and I'm also host of Ecosystem Chronicles, where we are a global forum to talk about everything partner intelligence in the partner and channel ecosystem. And this is my third episode today, and it's with a channel chief who is probably one of the sharpest sales-focused, metrics-focused channel chiefs that I've ever encountered, and figured that out in a matter of 5 minutes upon first meeting him. And I think we've known each other a couple of years now. And we both happen to be in San Diego, which is another cool fact. But this guy is actually head of partnerships for Drata, a security SaaS company. And we're going to be talking about a topic that is very dear to many SaaS companies' hearts, especially in partnerships, which is how do you acquire a dominant share of partners in a very fiercely competitive market when your product is competing with a lot of others. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining. Kevin, I want to just say you've been with Drata for what, 3-4 years now?
2.5.
2.5 years now.
Yep.
And what metrics have you affected there?
Yeah, Drata, and just the way I generally believe in the way you run a partner program, is that the true value of a partner program is incremental to the business. I think a lot of partner programs that I've seen kind of across tech, it's probably the norm at this point, is mostly focused on being inclusive of what the total company number is, which is, of course, one way to metric it, but to be the CRO's best friend. And again, as someone whose background was primarily in sales before I kind of came into BD, is that it's about how do I add to what the CRO is expecting. Right? So legitimately partner-first opportunities. And that's really what we've driven at Drata today. Partners source just over 31% of our business. So without partners, that 31% wouldn't even begin to exist. They also have driven, we have a way of having in Salesforce a way for AEs at the end of an opportunity to be able to say, hey, without this partner, I would not have won this deal. Not I would not have transacted this deal, but I wouldn't have won this deal. And that accounts for another 22% of our business, which means that 53% of our business would not exist in terms of net new closed won without partners involved, which is pretty cool. And a lot of companies, I think, will think about like, well, how much did you transact or do with partners? To me, that metric isn't that relevant because, again, like I've got to report up to a board and to a CRO, and he doesn't need me for transacting business. He needs me for helping him win business, and that's the key distinction that we look at Drata.
Well, that is interesting because a lot of channel partner leaders are actually reporting to marketing instead of to sales, and or considered in their own island and not always, directly communicating with or supplementing revenue, the CRO, right? So tell us about how did you establish your relationship with the CRO? Is it equal? Is it you report to him? How do you do
So
that?
I report to our COO. Our COO also owns revenue, so he owns all of go-to-market. I have never reported to a CRO in my time as a BD person, except for maybe a small sliver when I was at Expanse. But I think the way that BD can operate is being more strategic, right? So like the sales team has a very time-bound, focused results, which BD has to support, but also BD has longer-term things that, of course, aren't going to be metriced in the span of a single quarter. And so that's kind of the balance. And again, I've seen BD report into a lot of different orgs. I'm obviously going to prefer the way that I have it handled today. But I think there's sometimes you can see conflict, but it also depends on who the CRO is and the way that they shape things.
Got it. Cool. And so for you and your team, how much time do you spend on partner acquisition versus partner engagement and activation?
For sure. So I ran BD at a company called Thousand Eyes that was acquired by Cisco, and then at Expanse that was acquired by Palo Alto. Both of those companies primarily sold to the enterprise. So when you're doing BD in the enterprise, the key is focus, right? So like having a smaller subset of partners that you focus on that you go to market with. Drata is a little different. Drata is 3.5 years old and already has just over 5,000 customers, and most of those customers are startups. And so the challenge there is like the typical security vendors or security partners, like the Guidepoints and the Optics of the world, don't have or haven't invested in going down market as much because it's not as interesting to them, which totally makes sense. And so for us, what we've actually found is that in this, how hyper competitive the market is for us right now with how big GRC and compliance automation has gotten, is that we have to go find all these other partners that aren't getting as much love, right? Like the guide points and the Optives of the world, they're going to come as you start to sign their customers. That's what they want, and that's the way they should. That's the way they should operate, right? Because they get to be choosier. Whereas some of these smaller firms that are trying to become those one day, or at least trying to establish themselves, they're looking for newer technology. They are more, they're less risk adverse, right? They're willing to adopt earlier and earlier stage companies like Drata was. And so that's what we've done really is, again, we have this focus where we're pushing up market and we're having those relationships with those bigger partners. But at the same time, we're putting a lot of emphasis on how do we get a groundswell of wins today to sustain us till the wins tomorrow with those smaller and more kind of nimble regional boutiques.
Got it. All right, so now I've got to ask, because you have been one of our customers.
Yep.
What has been your approach to partner discovery and partner acquisition?
Yeah, I think, I've been in sales. You use companies like Clearbit and ZoomInfo to get you contact information to figure out who to go after from like a sales perspective, like, hey, these are my set of accounts. Right. I've never found anybody who's doing that for partners. And so for us, what we were doing originally was going on LinkedIn and looking up like any company that has 100 or less employees that has like virtual CISO as a keyword. And then we, our 50 LinkedIn mail credits a month, and we'd go and do it that way, as opposed to having something that can we could search through like a real database. And that's what we found with you guys, which was, I don't remember who introduced us at this point, but being able to find a company that operates the way Clearbit and ZoomInfo does, except for partner teams. And so that's been really helpful to us, like the amount of net new partners that we've been able to find. We see net new partners come inbound all the time as well. And it's crazy because we'll go on LinkedIn, look them up after they've come inbound, and there's just no rhyme or reason to it. So that's where Partner Optimizer has become pretty critical for us, is to be able to find those companies. I'd imagine also as we start to scale up market, getting better insights. I think one of the challenges you have with like some of the bigger SIs is figuring out who is who. Right. And that's where Partner Optimizer will help us as we start to scale up market as well. It's not quite where we're at yet, right. But obviously we've already seen the platform and know that it operates that way as well.
Yeah. No, it's cool that way. In fact, you can upload any partner at the time that you find them, their domain, and compare it to your ideal profile. Totally. And it basically says if it's a good one or not worth investing in, and what do you do from there?
Yeah, super helpful.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it's been great having you as a customer. What kind of advice do you have for other partner leaders who are just getting started?
Sure. I think you've been hired for a reason. You have ideas, like the idea, at least the way I think BD is supposed to be run, or partnerships at least, is sales is very much checkers, right? You are doing kind of the same move over and over because you figured out what works and you keep doing it. And BD is more chess. It takes a little longer and it's a bit more dynamic, but when you go in and you sit down, play your first moves on the chessboard, you've kind of got your first moves that you do every time. And so coming in as a BD leader, what you think based on knowing the company, based on knowing the market that you're entering, what you think might work. Invest in going after that first, hiring one or two kind of maybe junior ICs. Like, I'm not so concerned about hiring individual contributors that have a BD background. I'm so interested in hiring folks that are very interesting, right? Because like partners, they care more about that relationship aspect than the product. Obviously the product matters, but I think the relationship sustains that, because your product's going to make mistakes. Like take CrowdStrike, for example, what just happened. They're obviously a market leader, but their relationships are probably what sustained them in the partners that they do sustain through this kind of turmoil that they're in. But that's the way I like to hire. So I'll hire, like in the early days, hire one or two people to kind of go test out my theories that I have the strongest conviction on. If those things hit, then great. And we'll expand those teams and invest more into those theories that are now proven. And if they don't, then we'll move on to the next theory, right? And so I think that's your job as a BD leader, is to have theories, have convictions, right, to invest in those early, to figure out, have a timestamp. It's no different than like investing in the stock market. Like, hey, I have a theory that these stocks in this sector are going to do well. I invest in them. If at 6 months it's not working out, then I pull, or I just have, whatever that timeline is, setting that up and being very, very process driven on that.
Yeah. Process and metrics oriented.
Yeah. Yep. That's what that's my philosophy.
Right.
I'm not saying that's right for everybody, but I have convictions. I think if you don't, I don't know what you're doing in BD.
Yeah. And so in terms of how you talk up the ladder to your boss, how do you convince them of the budgets that you need?
100%. Yeah. It's ROI. It's being able to say, hey, without these people in seat, this incremental add to the business from these partners would not have happened. If all I'm like, AWS is our largest partner, we transact tens of millions of dollars a year through them. My team that runs AWS is not metriced on that. They are metriced on what does AWS bring back to us and what does AWS get involved in to help us win, not help us transact, but help us win. And so that's where I can say, hey, this AWS team that we have right now, this is how much they cost us from a payroll perspective, but here is what they're actually driving that is net new, incremental to the business that without them and that partnership would not exist. And that is where I become basically an extension of the sales team, as opposed to your point earlier, an island separate from the sales team.
Right. And you have to be making sure that you have the tools in place to actually measure that influence, measure that. Metric,
sure, that's just Salesforce and DealReg and having a good ops team, which I've been blessed enough to have. But we've got a lot of automation that's built out that our partners really enjoy, and also having, being able to create kind of scale. We've used Allbound for being able to have like partner enablement and stuff like that. You got to treat your partner ecosystem the same you treat your sales team, so that they can't become an extension if you don't enable them and train them the same way.
Absolutely. And so in terms of how you treat your partners, right? Any tips for partnership leaders?
Have clear, defined rules. Don't make exceptions. Just because one partner is bigger than another, like treat them all the same. Have a legit partner program that incentivizes folks to move up with you. But remember that you got to have something that partners care about. MDF is interesting. Like they want to invest in you, but they want to see that you're matching that investment. MDF's a great way to do that. But again, this all comes back to you got to have alignment with your leadership team. You got to finance bought in. You got to have a CRO bought in. I would be doing whatever I can to show metrics that prove to a CRO that when he's in a tight pinch or she's in a tight pinch, where like, hey, we don't know if we're going to hit it next quarter or whatever, that you are the first person they come to. At our company, I can promise you that our head of sales, if he's stuck and he's like, hey, I don't know what's going to happen next quarter, he's calling me first. And I don't think that is the norm, unfortunately, in BD, because I think a lot of us are, maybe some of us, it's not our fault, but I think we just haven't created incentives to align to what the business actually needs. We've created it to align to what we need to keep our jobs.
Right.
And I don't mean that offensively in any way. I just, as somebody who's done it 3 times now, twice for $1 billion exits, I think I have some credibility in speaking to that. Drata, we have a 500-person company. We have a 30-person BD team. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a company that small with that big of a BD team. And again, that's why we have that.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's no doubt you're cut from a different cloth than the typical head of partnerships that I meet.
Sure.
And I think that attributes to your success and why you're able to cut through and be as fiercely competitive as you've been. So congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll be talking next year at even more and more success that you're having. And I see also that you're now an investor in Stage 2 Capital, right? So good job.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin Kriebel from Drata, and have a great show. Anything you want to say about partnership leaders?
It's my first time here, so I'll have more to say probably after the conference.
We'll catch you later.
Seems great.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you in San Diego.
Yeah.